Hello, I am Mike.
Wait, this should be our intro.
Oops.
Hello. You want to introduce this time?
I'm Mike. Hello, everyone.
What's going on, everyone? This is Terranaut Recordings. I'm Nick,
I'm Sean.
and we like to make music.
We're a music production duo based in Brooklyn. And we work with songwriters and other musicians to help get their songs from demo to streaming serve.
That was like what I said, but like really slow.
Yeah.
Killing. Yeah, so basically we help people get from demo to stream ready. So if you need instruments recorded, if you need mixing, mastering, album art, collages, words of encouragement, a firm hug on the internet, hit us up. Our website's in the description, terranautrecordings.com. And yeah, we work with all budgets, so hit us up even if you're like, I don't have money.
We got sliding scales.
You got the fat sliding scale. So today's topic is the different mediums making music. So we're going to talk about, like, for example, using pen and paper, like in composing. We're going to talk about DAWs. We're going to talk about voice notes. We're going to, dive into all the different things and the things surrounding that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is using pen and paper and writing things down on manuscript paper. Or whatever kind of paper you want. Not everyone knows how to write with sheet music, but that's okay. I think sheet music is just one way to get an answer. I mean, people like Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, stuff like that, or even like early jazz. I wouldn't even say early jazz musicians. I think like medium jazz musicians. In like swing era, I don't think they were writing things down at all.
Oh, no. I mean, like Duke and like Billy Strayhorn, they wrote everything down.
Yeah.
Like they would write on trains and stuff.
But that was like even later on, but even the early iterations of jazz, which actually that predates what we're talking about. So actually, let's shift over to that. The oral tradition.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the times of of orally dictating music to each other.
Yes.
I think it's really important to think about that first, like that kind of where we're coming from, like the oral tradition of like passing down stories. You know, because stories came first.
Right.
For like humankind, and then it was songs eventually. But I mean, like if you go way back, there was no like paper to write things down. There's no like system of like musical notation to write things down. It's just oral tradition. I think that has a lot of benefits too, because one, you're limited to sort of what you can sing / play, so it's like more honest. It's a more honest representation of who you are, because you're limited to you.
Right.
There's also a memorability aspect, and it's also kind of cool because it's kind of like a game of telephone. And it'll slowly change over time, but I think over time it gets to its better version of itself, or not. It could get to the worst version of itself, but you know, it's kind of cool that it'll change over time, and I think that's a really valid way to start approaching songs.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, let's go back into the paper music thing. If you have the sort of means, if you know how to read music and you're fluent in reading music, I think it's very advantageous because you can get a lot of information on the page. And like, for example, when we play with my group, like we don't rehearse that often. It's mostly just reading. And like the thing with that is that it relies on very clear charts. There are some pitfalls to that though. Like, for example, like there's some stuff that you can't properly articulate because it's not quite on the grid. You could write like fast or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a big misconception. It's like sheet music is the king, but it's not really.
No. I think it depends on the music that you're playing too.
It definitely depends on the music you're playing. Because I mean, yeah, I think it's important to remember that sheet music, like that medium of sheet music, is like very Western European centric,
right?
And like very like, classical music.
Yeah, because a lot of music, I mean, you don't, like you said, it's passed down through oral and aural traditions that it really wouldn't do it any justice.
Right.
Like, trying to put it into like a Western sort of like a Western European lens.
Yeah, totally.
Of, like trying to write it down.
And then also like, I mean, like for example, the biggest thing that comes to mind is like the blue note, but like the true blue. You heard of like that like true blue note, that it's like not quite, because like in like the blue scale or whatever, it's like the major and minor third is like the cool thing, but like there's also that like sharp minor third or like flat major third. It's like the in between semitone thing. Which I think partially came because it was saying first, it was work songs. That's where it came from. How do you notate that? Because I mean, in when you're writing down a sheet music, your 12 tone equals temperament.
Right.
But it's like, how do you get that? So it does miss some information. That's how I used to compose primarily for a long time, and I still kind of do to a certain extent.
Yeah, I used to write everything down too.
But what I like about it is that you can kind of see how the song is lining up. Like you see like a clear trajectory, and you can kind of see how long it is, and sort of like gauge certain things
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah, the visual aspect I think is good, especially like when you start thinking about like form and stuff.
And you can also like see when, I mean, I don't know that this is a good thing because you're using your eyes instead of your ears, but you can sort of see when you're repeating an idea too much.
Yeah.
Which I don't think there's kind of such a thing as repeating an idea too much, but that I think that's not something to be afraid of. I mean, you look at like any like pop chorus, it's like the same thing over and over and over.
Oh yeah.
But people dig it,
Right.
you know.
Or like Philip Glass.
Yeah, that so I guess for me that's a pro and con because I can kind of monitor for that, but I shouldn't always necessarily monitor for that. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, why am I looking out for this? But yeah.
Yeah, and of course like that's like subjective, like
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
like belaboring something for too long.
Right, yeah.
Like when is that like threshold of okay, this is not like a refrain now. This is just like too repetitive.
Right, exactly. I think it's so hard too because like there's no right answer either.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just like a lot of trial and error.
And then there's also this is kind of a subset of that, but writing music in finale.
Oh yeah.
Theoretically, it should be the same thing,
But it's not.
but it's not the same thing. Yeah, and like,
Thank you, MIDI.
thank you, MIDI. Yeah, and I mean, it is the same action. You're still putting like dots on a page, but the fact that you can hear everything that you're putting down in real time, like by just clicking a play button, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
I think with the playback, it makes me think more through compose, like what's gonna happen next. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Where what can I put next? Oh, I mean, what if I repeat this idea one more time? And for better or worse, I don't know if I like it better, but I do find that when I write on paper and when I write with finale, it makes things easier. Or I guess it's just different. But what one thing that like for example copy pasting, I'm less afraid to repeat sections because I could just
Right.
versus
Exactly.
where I have to like write it out. It's my laziness kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can move things around a little easier. Like for example, you can put a measure nothing. But like for example, you can like take a measure and then put it 2 measures back and then see what happens.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And you can do all these like sort of different things that you can't do. Like you'd have to erase and then write it again and try it again.
Right.
And all
Just
this
a
stuff.
little more time consuming with.
Yeah. So
handwritten
and
stuff.
it's sort of like what we were saying on the previous episode of like the ideas are fleeting, so you have to get them out now while you can. You know.
Speaking from personal experience, there is definitely a learning curve with like learning those softwares, but it's like once you do it enough times, it's like you
Yeah,
become
oh,
like
yeah.
relatively quick.
I'm faster at Logic
it.
at Finale than I am writing with my hands.
Same,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it comes out a lot nicer. Yeah,
Right, yeah, and then like you would have to just transfer it to Finale anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I mean, unless you're writing out charts for everyone.
but yeah,
which-
you're cutting the step in the process,
Right.
which is super useful. And then there's also the classic songwriter thing, which is writing out the lyrics and the chords.
Oh yes, yeah, like a chord sheet.
That to me, I still really like. I mean, I think people like talk bad about that a little bit. I love that. That's how I learned guitar.
Yeah, no, I don't see why anyone would talk bad about that.
What I think so the biggest pitfall to me is like you can't get really specific with it. So like for example, specific voicing stuff like that. The chord symbols can get you kind of close, but in terms of like how the chord is laid out and like specific like where the voices are, it's like impossible. But that's also kind of cool because then you're handing your music to someone else and then they're helping you bring it alive.
Right.
So it can be totally different than like what you previously thought it would sound like.
That's a good point. It definitely allows room for flexibility. in
Yeah.
that. And it's which is if you really trust like the musicians that you're playing with, I think that would be a pleasant
Right.
surprise.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Instead of like writing out, and I know like you probably don't want to get a chart with like specific voicings on it.
No, I mean, because then I probably couldn't play it,
Yeah.
you know, or it would take a lot of time practicing to learn it.
As
But-
opposed to just like chord symbols and rhythms.
Yeah.
And stuff.
and then I don't know, I mean, having the lyrics in front of me too is
Yeah.
really helpful because I tend to just ignore the lyrics.
Mhm.
You know, that's just the way I listen to music, and it takes me a few times, and then I hear the lyrics, and I'm like, wow, that's compelling.
Yeah.
But it saves me that like 15 listens before I'm like, wow, that's compelling, and I can be like, wow, that's compelling right when I read it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like having the lyrics too because that really informs how I play
Mm-hmm.
too, and like no choice rhythm,
Totally.
when to use a certain note in a certain octave, when to.
And certain feelings too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, because it all has emotional gravitas to it that
definitely.
you have to, because you're playing for that. It's not
Right.
like you're not. It's not about you at that point.
Right.
It's like
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
the songwriter, it's the singer, it's the lyrics. That's what people are listening to. So whatever information that you can have that will what am I trying to say?
Whatever information that you have that will help you assist the song.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Is like the more the better.
I'm a Sean reader.
You know me.
Yeah. Chord symbols and lyrics are dope.
Hmm.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Do you know
Right.
anyone who writes music with tab? Oh, you know what?
Uh.
Actually, no. There was a lot of guitarists I knew, like in high school, that would use Guitar Pro or like that Penguin guitar, I think.
Uh-huh.
Because there you can write out the tab, and then they had like drum loops or something like that,
Oh, that's
and
pretty
like
cool.
yeah, and then you write out bass and too.
Nice.
Anyway, now we have our final category, which is debatably the most interesting, which is DAW's digital audio workstation using your computer to make music.
Yes.
Wow, boomers beware.
Using it as an instrument.
Well, actually, so we did that for the title themes when we wrote that. I think we did something interesting. At least I think it's interesting. Sean brought his laptop into this room where I have my computer. So basically, Sean had like MIDI instruments, sequencers, drum machines, all this stuff. He had his interface. His interface was going out to the inputs of my interface, and we would track that and kind of like print it into Logic. So he was using Ableton, I was using Logic, and we kind of used them and combined them together. There's a lot of cool results that you can get from doing that kind of thing on the computer. Like
Mm-hmm.
I recently started writing on the computer, like on Logic. I tried doing Ableton, but my brain doesn't quite fit with it yet. I like understand it, but I can't get my ideas out. I get too
Mm.
distracted. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot.
There's a lot of yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to get sort of really hung up on like such a little minute thing that
Right.
like doesn't really make sense in like the full picture
Yeah,
of it.
totally. Or like I start tweaking settings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, I feel like with like doing stuff like that, it's sort of what I was saying along the lines of like you can move a measure behind when using Finale.
Mm-hmm.
But with the DAWs, you can rearrange the sections. You can do all these cuts. You can like do all this stuff that you can't normally do.
Right, and it's like you hear it immediately too.
And what's cool is that like when you do bring it into a band or a group or whatever, you can just hand them that, and they're like they could learn from the recording, and they know exactly what to play.
Right, and especially in like a lot of bands, like you're not. It depends on the music, but a lot of times like they're not gonna have charts for you.
Right.
Like it's like, hey, like
Yeah.
learn this from the recording by
Which is
listening.
like a better way to learn. I mean, that's what they told us all of jazz schools, like learn from the recording.
Yeah,
You know?
no, you remember it better.
Yeah.
It's because you're not relying on like paper, like a
Yeah,
piece of paper,
and
unless you have like a photographic memory. But
and your ears are like working to preserve the information and like commit it to your body.
mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
With DAWs too, it's like you can really explore more of like timbre and like textural difference that you can't really
Yeah, that's true.
explore like writing it out.
Yeah, especially with VSTs, you can switch from a piano to Rhodes to whirly, like
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. And yeah, you're really accessing that other dimension of music, which is tone,
Mm-hmm.
which is super important. I think it's debatably the most important thing. It's like sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
how it sounds and
Yeah.
the timbre of it.
I don't know if it's the most. There's no most important thing, but
It is important though.
yeah, to me it's very important. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like writing in the DAW kind of unlocks that in
Yeah.
a way where it's like, oh, I never would have thought like this part or like this would sound good with this instrument or
Right. Exactly.
and automation too. Especially with like electronic music, I've learned it's like it's very much development but texture wise, not so
Yeah.
much
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
thematic wise,
Totally.
but it's like you could kind of only achieve that in a DAW, really.
You know, like there's a lot of like boomers on Facebook groups. They're like, "Oh, this Billie Eilish only uses 3 chords," but it's like, yeah, that's not the point though. Like when people look at music through the lens of chords and being like, "Oh, this is great because it has 20 chords or whatever," there's only a limited amount of chords. You have 12 notes in the musical alphabet
Mhm.
in the system we're using, and you only have 4 triads. That's 48. You could add the seventh chords. You could add extra notes, and it goes further and further. Oh dang! You could add other notes, and it goes further and further. But the thing is, like at the core, you still have 48 notes, and people don't use augmented or diminished triads often. So that's 24 chords. You're very limited in how you can use these chords. Most chord progressions have been made already. So you can like automate something a specific way that no one has ever done before, or for like a second. Like there's a lot of different production decisions that you can make that are really interesting that no one's ever done before, and there's a lot more room for innovation there.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like going off that, I know like a lot of like people that do like film scoring or like game design, like sound. It's like they kind of use the DAW first as like an instrument to get their ideas out, and
Yeah.
then they extract the written out parts for
Oh
it.
yeah, but to then send it to people to track it
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
get like better
Yeah.
sounds. But yeah,
Yeah. So it's really like kind of unlimited what you can do within like these DAWs, like as far as like music composition goes.
they're
And
really
like
powerful. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a playground.
So that's the end of today's episode. If you want to work with us, send us a message. We got all the stuff down in the description. There's some subscribing videos somewhere on this screen somewhere. But thanks for
Around.
watching. Dislike, subscribe, do whatever you want.
We're Terranaut Recordings. We're a
Wait,
music.
but your mic is like you were like this. I don't know if it sounds.